Hello all, welcome to the first episode of our video game related podcast, 16-Bit Thief. I am your host, Jake Melvin.
And I am co-host, Andrew Smith.
So for today's first episode, we're going to be talking about our top 5 all-time favorite video games. Now there's thousands of video games out there, so Andrew and I of course chose from our 5 all-time favorites, and we're going to be discussing them today.
Not only will we be talking about our favorite video games, we also got a few interviews. I went and got 2 off the street from 2 random UCO students, and my co-host went and got one from a professor at the Liberal Arts Building.
We're going to switch over to them now and see what they have to say.
Now, find a new rival.
What is your name?
My name is Jordan Ware.
What grade are you at UCO?
I am a junior.
What is your favorite type of video games?
Preferably sports and shooting games.
What would be your top 3 favorite video games of all time?
Most definitely I'm going to have to go with the Saints Row. I'm going to have to go with a little Madden 13. And then NCAA 07.
Now let's hear from another student.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
What is your name?
Daniel Yurzar.
What grade are you at UCO?
I'm a senior.
What is your favorite type of video games?
Sports.
What would be your top 3 favorite video games of all time?
Madden, FIFA, and Call of Duty.
And this is what my Spanish professor at the Liberal Arts Building had to say.
I think my favorite game of all time would be Republic Commando. I liked that it was a multiplayer game. It was the first multiplayer game I ever really played, and I enjoyed that aspect against facing another human instead of a computer. There was some challenge to seeing the unpredictability of another human being and seeing somebody find cheats and exploit them in the map.
So that was pretty interesting to see the varied tastes that we had. You know, of course, a lot of people were choosing sports games and all of that. And didn't one guy say he had Saints Row?
Yes, one of them, their favorite game was Saints Row.
I wonder which one. I always was a fan of the second one. I always thought that was the most fun.
That's a game I never really got into.
It's more of a gonzo version of Grand Theft Auto, and, you know, I respect it for those kind of reasons, and that's all right.
That's what I've always heard about it.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, my Spanish professor saying Republic Commando, that was kind of a shock. That's a Star Wars game not a lot of people talk about.
It's understandable with it being one of those first big multiplayer games that you can play with other people.
Yeah, because it was like, I think it was around the first time the Xbox came out, was when they were really flaunting that as a big title, you know. And it was interesting for the time, because not a lot of Star Wars games allowed you to do that.
Yeah.
So that's what they think. Of course, the whole meat of the podcast is going to be Andrew and I discussing what we believe are our 5 all-time favorite games.
Now here are my top 5 favorite games of all time. My number 1 favorite game is World of Warcraft. This is my all-time favorite because I've spent more time playing this game than anything else. Mainly because of the endless content it has with beautiful artwork and music surrounding everywhere you go on your journey through the massive world of Azeroth. My second favorite game of all time is Dark Souls 1. This is my favorite console game of all time because of the huge sense of achievement you would get when beating a boss and then when finishing the game. This was the hardest game I've ever played, which made me feel so much more accomplished once I actually beat it. My third favorite game is Super Smash Bros. Smash Bros is one of the first games I ever played and is still one of my favorites. It combines the greatness of multiple different Nintendo games and brings their characters and abilities into one game, all to fight each other.
Killing spree.
My fourth favorite game of all time is Halo 3. The campaign of Halo 3 is the most fun story mode I have ever played, and I think that is why I've finished it over 50 times. My friends and I would stay up all night as kids trying to finish the story mode faster and faster, and it would not even get boring to us. My fifth favorite game of all time, it's still way up there compared to other games, is Modern Warfare 2. This was one of the first games I played online, which made this game so much fun, but it also had an awesome story mode to go with it. These small maps in the multiplayer mode made these games be non-stop, high-action, mindless fun.
So that's Andrew's top 5 favorite games of all time. But now, it's time to hear what I think are my all-time favorites. First and foremost, my favorite video game of all time is Final Fantasy VI. Why, you may ask? Well, first and foremost, many of the stories that were told in video games were just kind of generic fantasies at the point. Final Fantasy VI took place in a world that was full of ruin and magic and mystery, and all of that other stuff. It had such a compelling, fantastic story, and beautiful music by Nobuo Uematsu. My second favorite game of all time is Castlevania, Symphony of the Night. Released in 1997 during the Polygon ceiling of video games,
along came this title which had 2D animation and a beautiful soundtrack by Japanese composer Michiru Yamane. I could gladly pick up this game and play it any day of the week and not get bored. Un forastero! My third favorite game of all time is Resident Evil 4. Now I know what you may be thinking to yourself, why Resident Evil 4 as opposed to all the others? Well, you have to understand that when Resident Evil 4 first came out, not many games were like it, if any. With its fast-paced gameplay and compelling story, Resident Evil 4 certainly has stood the test of time and remains my third favorite game of all time.
I don't lose.
So for my fourth favorite game of all time, I decided to choose Street Fighter III: Third Strike. With its beautiful hand-drawn animation, fantastic jazzy soundtrack, fast-paced, deep and technical gameplay, there wasn't a single Street Fighter like it on the market, nor was there any other fighting game, except for Garou maybe. To this day, it's still being played competitively in Japan and even in America. There wasn't a single Street Fighter game I'd ever recommend more than that.
And for my fifth favorite game of all time, I chose Donkey Kong Country 2. Now, while the first Donkey Kong Country game was a platforming masterpiece, the second one was pumped up on steroids. It had better music, better gameplay, better graphics, more worlds to explore, and more replay value. I don't think there's a single platformer that's even come close to Donkey Kong Country 2 in almost 23 years, and that is quite an impressive feat.
Death to the enemies of the Horde!
So it's pretty impressive to, see what you chose for your top 5 games of all time. It's very nice variety, you don't have one of the same genre, which I found pretty interesting.
I thought your list was very interesting too. Some games that people might not have heard of but are still very popular games. May not be in the US, but overseas still very popular.
And with World of Warcraft, it's interesting you put that on there. How long have you been playing again exactly?
I've been playing for about 8 years, but my uncle started it when it was vanilla World of Warcraft, and I was able to be introduced to it on his computer and start some tunes on there. Never really got too in-depth with it, but once I got it for myself, I haven't stopped playing it since.
Yeah, and I never really played a whole lot of World of Warcraft. I never had the subscription. I always had the trials. But a friend of mine, he was diehard into it, and he would, him and I actually, we would rent, get the trial for the weekend.
Yeah.
And we would just play all night, man. We would just go to the camps, and it was so much fun.
There's always something to do. There's never ends.
Yeah, there is just, I think that's probably infinite replay value. That's one of those games that you could argue that it's a contender for that.
There's content everywhere.
Yeah. And with Modern Warfare 2, it's when you put that on there, that's another one I found interesting, because that was one I kind of dogged for years.
Really? Why is that?
I don't know. It was just, I never saw the appeal of it. And then, for the first time in probably 2 years ago, I went back and played it. I'm like, okay, this is actually not that bad. This is fun. I mean, it's broken, but it's fun.
I think a lot of the Call of Duties had really good campaigns. Modern Warfare 2 is up there as one of the best for me, but the multiplayer Modern Warfare 2 is really what puts it over the top from all the others. There's just so many small maps that make it to where it's constant action, not just running around, not seeing anything.
Mm-hmm. And it was really great story, great soundtrack too. I loved the soundtrack. I could listen to that on vinyl. That was some fantastic stuff. Well, unfortunately, folks, it looks like we're running about out of time. But again, we'd like to thank you for tuning into the first episode of the podcast, The 16-Bit Thief. I'm your host, Jake Melvin.
And I'm your co-host, Andrew Smith. Thank you for tuning in to us.
And we hope to see you again next time when we cover the topic of video games being discussed as art. We hope to see you again next time we log in.